Bulletcast for life.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Under the Radar. My name is Brandon Tanguma, and on today's episode, we're going to be going over the latest episode of NXT television, Total Divas, and the big announcement coming from New Japan involving their expansion into the United States. But first, let's talk about some random news that's happened around wrestling this weekend. Bound for Glory, Impact's biggest show of the year, took place over the weekend, and they've made some roster moves. They have some new signings. Ace Romero, you might have heard of him. He is a rather hefty fellow. He was in the Double or Nothing Battle Royal. He is with Impact, so good for him. I have not seen Bound for Glory yet. Well, I'm probably not going to see Bound for Glory, just to be honest with you. But some other signings. We have Joey Ryan signing with Impact Wrestling. Joey has been with Impact before. That's actually how I kind of first knew Joey Ryan. He kind of did the whole porn star, kind of like cheesy, over-the-top cop, 70s-ish type gimmick back in the day, and that's kind of how I got to know him. And, rumors are speculating where he was going to go. His contract with Lucha Underground, that whole fiasco finally ended, so he was free to go wherever he wants. Obviously, he wasn't going to be able to do his gimmick in WWE. He'd have to just completely revamp that. So it was probably between Impact, ROH, AEW. AEW could have been a perfect fit for him. He was in All In. He had maybe one of the biggest pops of the night with the penis druids, and he came back to life. He's been involved with the Being the Elite guys and been on the series. So it's kind of a surprise that Joey has picked Impact Wrestling. Who knows what exactly the politics, the figures that were being thrown around. We know that maybe Impact isn't the most profitable company in the world, so they're not really delving out too much. But maybe this is more of a fact that Joey, wants to still work his indie dates. He wants to still do his bar wrestling, and Impact is still letting people do independent dates, but maybe Impact is kind of less of a commitment for Joey, that he can do that, and he can do more independent dates compared to AEW, where they're going to be on the road at least once every single week, and who knows what they're going to do with house shows going down the line. Speaking of AEW, former AEW wrestler Kylie Rae, she appeared at Impact's Bound for Glory. She was already advertised for, I think, like some sort of meet and greet or whatever was going on in the Chicago area for Bound for Glory, but she is on Impact. No word yet if she's actually going to sign with the company, if she's going to get locked down, but Impact's women's division is sneaky good. I think people are kind of, especially now that Impact is going to be going on Access. I believe their debut is today, if I do so recall. But they're going to be on Access doing their weekly show. I think Kylie Rae could be a great addition. You got Tessa Blanchard, who is arguably the biggest star they have in the company. You got Jordan Grace. You got Kylie. If Kylie Rae's there, she can be good. You got Hogan, the other Hogan, the female wrestler Hogan, and you got some other women on there. And honestly, Impact's women's division is probably better than AEW's women's division. Now, talking about some signings going to WWE. Jake Atlas has signed with WWE. He is expected to go to the Performance Center in January. If you don't know who Jake Atlas is, he is a West Coast wrestler. If you listen to Phillips' APW recaps, he is the current Universal Champ. He had a Fatal 4-Way match? Yes, a Fatal 4-Way match with, oh my god, I am completely blanking. Sean Spears. I wanted to say Ty Dillinger, but I know that's not his name anymore. Sean Spears and the Lucha Bros were all together in a Fatal 4-Way match for the Universal Championship for APW. And he's been doing things at PWG. I have not seen his work in PWG, but obviously, if I've been impressed with his work in APW here in the Bay Area. If usually, these indie shows, they're good, but PWG is just kind of that next level up where they just kind of take it to that next level. And, good for him. He's a fantastic wrestler. I haven't really seen his promo ability. His character work seems to be there. So I'm happy for Jake. Hopefully he gets a good run down there at NXT. So some other news, some sad news. WWE is on a house show loop in Australia, and Xavier Woods has suffered an Achilles injury. WWE and Xavier have separately confirmed that this injury was sustained at the end of the Australian tour. This was in Sydney. The New Day was taking on the Revival, and I think he just kind of was jumping off the top rope and he landed, and something happened. Still no word yet on exactly how severe the injury is. If you're a sports fan, you know that Kevin Durant just recently suffered from an Achilles injury, and that can be debilitating. You can be out for an entire year, and really you're out for like a good 14 16 months till you actually like feel the same and are able to kind of come back and be yourself. So maybe the Achilles injury is no joke, and especially with the tag team division the way it is, maybe Xavier is going to have to. Obviously, he's not going to be wrestling for a little bit. Hopefully, it's more 4 to 6 months than 10 to 12 months, but maybe Kofi Kingston is going to have to slide into his role, and he's going to have to be a tag team with Big E, just because that tag team division in SmackDown and just kind of the tag team division as a whole in WWE is not very good. You split it down the middle. You got 2-3 good teams on each side, but you can't run with that for an entire year. All the best to Xavier. Hopefully he gets well. We're going to hopefully there's an update by the Bulletcast on Thursday if we know the exact timetable. So, it might be a severe tear, but we're not exactly sure just yet, so I don't want to speculate, but things are not looking good, and especially it happened in Australia. That is a terrible, terrible flight home. The flight home after an Australian tour is probably no fun to begin with, but then if you have an Achilles injury on top of that, no fun. So now moving on to New Japan, and on Monday, they announced that they are expanding into the United States. This is phase 3 of their international business plan. Step 1 was to search for talent. Step 2 was running shows in the United States and other countries and markets. And now they have announced that they're going to have a subsidiary, a group, a cluster of cities that they are going to run in. And I'm still not exactly sure how this exactly is going to go. If this is going to be kind of like the NWA, where they're going to have like the old school NWA, where they're going to have like a bunch of different, indie promotions kind of work together and they can like influx talent, or if they're going to actually be like, so there's the West, territory. It says 6 cities and 4 states. So obviously probably, San Francisco, LA, Portland, Seattle, and maybe something, I don't know. But anyways, then you got Texas. It says there's 4 cities in there, so probably Houston, Dallas. I'm terrible with geography. Maybe El Paso will be thrown in there. I don't know. But then you got the Southeast, 6 cities in 4 states. You got the Mid, 7 cities in 6 states, and then the East, 4 cities and 3 states. So obviously this is big news with all the kind of revolution going on in the wrestling world. You got New Japan putting themselves out there as they're already the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world, but now they're going to try to insert themselves and try to maybe be the number 2 promotion, or maybe even the number 1 promotion in the United States. We've kind of seen that they've kind of had some dwindling effects recently with their shows and attendance. The first big show they had in LA, it was huge, drew a good house. Then they went to the Cow Palace show. Wasn't an exact sellout, but still a good house. Then it just kind of seems, I don't know if it's like they're going to the well one too many times, or kind of the novelty has worn off, because I think what wrestling fans, especially New Japan wrestling fans, they want like those big Japanese shows in America. And even when the G1 came to town in Texas, in Dallas, maybe they kind of found out that Dallas isn't like the hub of wrestling that, maybe LA or New York or Chicago, like Texas, Dallas, no shots thrown, but maybe that's just not kind of a place that a lot of wrestling fans are willing to travel to, and maybe there's just not a lot of wrestling. I don't exactly know why that G1 show didn't work out too well. I mean, maybe if they ran the G1 show in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, LA, maybe they would have drawn a bigger show. But maybe, it also kind of helps that it's the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Cuban owns the Dallas Mavericks. He used to own Access TV, so they probably got a brother discount to run in that building. So that was probably another reason why they were there. So we're going to have to stay tuned and find out. The next batch of U.S. shows is actually going to be right in my backyard. I will be going. It is on Saturday, November 9th at the Globe Theater. And then we have another show in LA on Monday, November 11th. So just in a matter of few weeks, the New Japan will be back in America. Maybe we will get some more information on exactly what's going to go on. That San Jose show is going to feature Jushin Thunder Liger's final United States match. I'm very excited to be there for Jushin Liger's last match in the U.S. I saw him at San Francisco State a few months ago for the Super J Cup. It was fantastic, and just to be there for a historic moment like that is going to be a whole lot of fun. Also, some other talent that has been announced: Kota Ibushi, Juice Robinson, Naito, Evil, Sonata, Jay White, Chase Owens, Minoru Suzuki, Lance Archer, Tomohiro Ishii, Toru Yano, Taiji Ishimori, as well as those are the people that are going to be for both shows, but Liger, Okada, and Will Ospreay are only going to be appearing on the first show in San Jose. So hopefully that San Jose show is going to be a big show. Maybe, not a big show, because they're going to have the Power Struggle show going on the week before. So that's going to be kind of like the last big show before the the Wrestle Kingdom event. So maybe, we're not going to get an IWGP Championship match, but maybe we get a U.S. title match maybe they're going to give a rematch with Lance Archer and Juice Robinson. I assume they're going to be some sort of U.S. title match which might be the main event, but Okada, Liger, and Ospreay only being exclusively for San Jose maybe kind of shows that that's definitely going to be the bigger show, and that's going head to head with Full Gear from AEW that same day. So I don't know exactly what the streaming platform is going to be, if it's going to be a live show on New Japan World, if it's going to just be on Fight, if it's going to be tape delay. So just stay tuned. Once the match card and everything will be announced, be sure to check back in with your boy, and I will tell you all about it. So now let's move on to the NXT television report. This is last week's episode, October 16th, 2019. As always, it takes place in Full Sail University, and the commentators are Mauro Ranallo, Nigel McGuinness, and Beth Phoenix. So now this is week 3 of the NXT AEW head-to-head clash, and ratings for NXT are not looking so good. They continue to take a dip. AEW faltered a little bit in last week's ratings, but they are still above 1 million people. I believe it was like 1.18 or whatever, like that was like, they dipped a little bit, but it was very minuscule compared to what NXT has seen. NXT has kind of seen a hard dip. It's around the 700,000 mark, and I'm hearing from my sources, which is like Wade Keller sources, that the people, or the amount of people that the people in NXT really wanted to reach that threshold, was kind of around the 800,000 mark. And they're continuously seeing people kind of drop off. And with shows like this, I thought this was if this was just an hour show, this really kind of felt like a network show, just because there's so many squash matches and just, good storytelling, but it was just kind of like, it wasn't, invigorating to watch. It wasn't super entertaining. It was just kind of there and just kind of run of the mill, what you would see on the network for a time. And NXT has maybe faltered a little bit in terms of the on-screen product, from the network, going back, maybe in the last year and a half, 2 years. But those takeovers are always fantastic. They always deliver. But I think a lot of people only see the takeovers, so don't really watch the normal, week-to-week show in NXT. And now that they're on this big platform on USA, this is definitely like reminiscing, or I don't know if I would say reminiscing, because they've only been on USA for like a month or whatever, but this definitely kind of had the feel of what they did on the network. So now we start off with Tommaso Ciampa taking on Angel Garza, and Ciampa wins in 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Angel is a really good kind of up-and-coming Hispanic wrestler, and I really thought that he could have been, something. Not saying he's completely buried by this, but I thought maybe you could have given Garza maybe a little bit more offense, but I know Tommaso Ciampa just coming back. You want to put him over Strong, and he's definitely in the hunt for the NXT Championship. So we get, after the match, we get a welcome back chant, and then we get to shock the system. The Undisputed Era comes out. All 4 members were there. Ciampa sat on a chair holding his camouflage crutch, waiting for the ring. Kylie Rae went to the announcers and said, "You might want to take a look at this," and he threw a flash drive at Morrow, and the Undisputed Era waved at Ciampa. So the Undisputed Era comes out. They don't attack Ciampa, but they give the announcers a little thumb drive to see something. So Nigel hyped that there was going to be a message from Finn Balor later tonight, very vague on what that actually meant. I think the assumption that a lot of people, that I kind of had, was that Finn Balor was going to be there live in the building to cut a promo, but that is not exactly what happened. So backstage, we see Keith Lee listening to his headphones in preparation for his match. Next up, we get Morrow through to the contents on that video, and it was the Undisputed Era saying that they had to make an example. They had the Velveteen Dream draped over a broken box in the back of their garage, and said that what has happened to you is, this is what's going to happen to you if you go against the Undisputed Era. Nigel wondered what William Regal is going to do. So the Velveteen Dream apparently has been kind of suffering with a nagging back injury. He was set up to take on Roderick Strong for the North American Championship, so obviously his back injury kind of stopped him from competing in that match. So I think this was kind of the only way you can really write him out without him actually getting physical and maybe re-aggravating or further injuring his back. I mean, it was a good, solid segment. You can't really, inspect it too much, just because they're kind of handcuffed on what kind of physicality they can do with Dream. So next up, we get Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch taking on Imperium. That is Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel, with Alexander Wolf in the corner. No Walter to be seen, and Imperium win in 8 minutes and 37 seconds. As I said, this isn't really a squash match. I would say this is more of a showcase match. Imperium gets the win here. It was a good, solid action from both these guys, but I mean, Imperium, I think the focus has really been on Walter not being there. Oney Lorcan, Danny Burch are good, but I mean, all of these guys haven't really been, a focal point in NXT, so I could kind of see why the viewers weren't really inspired to stay and watch this. It's fine. I mean, it's good, but they didn't really give us a reason for having these matches. I mean, this is kind of the same thing I've been saying about AEW. AEW is throwing out matches that are really good in ring, but there's not a lot of character development. There's no promos. There's no reasoning behind why these matches are taking place. And I think we're kind of seeing some of the same, things hindering both NXT and AEW. Johnny Gargano segment, we get some DIY highlights and lowlights, and then we get some solo highlights of old Johnny wrestling. We go back, and there's Kathy Kelly to interview him. He says that he won't know. She asked him, how does he feel about Tommaso Ciampa coming back, and he said he doesn't know how he feels about Ciampa until he sees him face to face. We go backstage once again to see Dominik Dijakovic hyping himself up for his match against Keith Lee, and then we have a match between Kaden Carter versus Io Shirai. And who else would win this match but Io? Io wins in 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Good moonsault by Io. I mean, absolutely fantastic. She gets the low angle, really drives herself into her opponent's body. Definitely looks like a devastating maneuver, as old Vinnie Mac would say. After the match, Shirai grabs the mic and she says, "Not Rhea, not Bianca, Shayna, it's me." So now Io Shirai is throwing her hat in the ring for the match against Shayna Baszler. So now we have, three very capable women to take on Shayna Baszler. But then Rhea Ripley comes out to answer the call. She steps up to Shirai. What a great tangled mess the women's division is right now. That's what the person says on this report. And she says that last week Bianca decided to run her mouth, and next week I get to put her back in her place. Io If you ever spit my name out your mouth, I have no problem shutting you up too. And then Shirai yelled at Rhea in some Japanese, circled Rhea, but then in the end she scurried out. So I thought this was a definite. I thought this was a really good segment. I thought Io was limited, and obviously she's limited in what she can say in English. But I thought Rhea came out, carried herself quite nicely, towering over Io. Io talks all this smack when she's alone, but then once the babyface comes out to confront her, she kind of steps away. And she doesn't, it wasn't like very cowardly. It wasn't like outwardly cowardly what Io did, but you can kind of see through her that she was kind of, scared of Rhea. She kind of stepped back and was like, okay, I'm not going to mess with her. We get some shots of last week of Cameron Grimes getting the quick win over Boa, and then Killian Dane following up with destroying Boa. I don't think I exactly said that last week, but Killian Dane beat up on old Boa. William Regal said to Kathy Kelly that the Velveteen Dream wouldn't be able to appear next week or anytime soon for his North American Championship match. So now that Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic will be the number one contender, whoever wins that match will be the number one contender for the North American title. So then, right on cue, we get Keith Lee taking on Dominik Dijakovic for the number one contendership of the North American Championship. And it was a really good match up until the end when Roderick Strong interfered to get the double DQ. And so Roderick Strong trying to outsmart everybody. So now there's no winner, so he can't have a match and he can't have to challenge anybody. But then William Regal comes up and says that that Roderick Strong has messed up because now that he has interfered in this match, now his one-on-one title match has changed into a triple threat, and yes, he will take on Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic. So it is what it is. I thought this was kind of a stupid way to get to the triple threat match. I thought it was also stupid that Roderick Strong waited so long. As I said, he waited over 15 minutes to get involved into the match. How does he know that the match wasn't going to end that quickly? Why didn't he just, as soon as the bell came on, he just kind of, attack both the guys? But it is what it is. I mean, it was just kind of, we've seen this before of the heel interfering into the match to try to outsmart everyone, but then he just ends up getting outsmarted. And yeah, I didn't really like this, so just another little reason why NXT may be faltering just a wee bit. During the break, we get Undisputed Era being angry about Regal's decision, and then we go on to Matt Riddle taking on Bronson Reed, and Matt Riddle wins in 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Good, solid offense. Matt Riddle being able to showcase his strength against a much bigger Bronson Reed. Bronson was in the showcase tournament, and I mean, I didn't really expect that much from him. I wasn't really impressed, but he has a much different look, and I think he was definitely a good person to put over Matt Riddle, and just kind of Matt Riddle just kind of not spinning his wheels, but just kind of not really doing anything at the moment. But sometimes you just kind of get the talent out there, get their moves over, and they leave. So Bianca Belair, we get some Bianca Belair hype. She said that her match with Rhea was going to be fun, but Rhea, it would be a nightmare. Oh, but for Rhea, the match is going to be a nightmare. So we get Kushida. We get an update on Kushida that he has re-injured his wrist. That he has a hairline fracture, and he's going to be out for a month. So some sad news for that. Maybe Kushida could enter himself in the Cruiserweight division. I think that could be a whole lot of fun. Next up, we get another match. We get Tegan Knox taking on Tainara, and Tegan wins in 2 minutes and 52 seconds. It was another enhancement match. Tainara has kind of been that go-to jobber in the women's division. I don't really know why. I think there's other women that you can have out there. I mean, not saying that I think Tainara is, a super valuable piece, but I mean, I kind of see some upside, but also she's been there for so long that if she were to do something, I would have assumed she would have done it by now. And we're in the 6th match, and the only non-enhancement match I would really say would be Keith Lee and Dijakovic. I mean, yes, the tag team match was longer than most of these other matches, but I mean, obviously the Imperium were the focus, or a focus, combination of a focus and a showcase. But I think this is also, a kind of something that NXT needs to they went so far in one direction their first show against AEW that they just kind of threw everything out there. Everything was like a takeover caliber match. And now this week, almost every match was kind of a job match, a showcase match, whatever you want to call it. And I think they just need to kind of find that nice balance to where, you can be able to hold the audience's attention by having good matches that matter, but then also kind of sprinkle in some showcase matches to where people aren't gonna change the channel because they already know who's gonna win and there's no real reason of watching the match. But moving on, we get a Kathy Kelly tries to interview Tegan, yeah. So Kathy Kelly tries to interview Tegan Knox, and she was joined by Dakota Kai. Before Knox could talk, the four horsewomen come out, and then Shayna took the mic and said, "Let me guess, you're going to want to throw your name into the hat. Huh. Let's ask your friend Dakota what it's like to face off against me. You're running out of limbs to rehab, blah, 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 blah." Baszler and friends left ringside. The women's War Games match continues to take shape. According to, is this Kelly Wells? According to Kelly Wells, he thinks that there's going to be a women's War Games match, which I think that could be a lot of fun. I mean, you have I don't know how many people you're going to actually have in the match. If you're going to have just 3, if you can have 4, maybe, the 3 horsewomen plus Io Shirai taking on Tegan Knox, Dakota Kai, Candice LeRae, and Rhea Ripley. I think that could be some fun stuff going on. So definitely the women's division is definitely shaping up. I think it's definitely much better than I expected it to be. I think I kind of forgot that Tegan Knox and Dakota Kai were coming off of injury. So now, we have a lot of good wrestlers coming in. And maybe if the Mae Young Classic is going to happen, we get some other wrestlers coming in. So I'm not worried about the women's division in NXT. Next up, we get Boa taking on Killian Dane, and Killian Dane makes quick work of Boa in 3 minutes and 37 seconds. So, once again, another squash match. And I don't know, I think we kind of saw in the ratings that maybe the WWE or NXT has kind of gone so far in this direction that maybe they need to reel it in and not do that anymore. So then we get, Killian Dane winning makes sense, kind of keep his momentum going. Who knows what exactly Killian Dane is going to be doing in the future. We get a Lio Rush segment. They kept it short, just kind of putting over the fact that he's the Cruiserweight Champion and blah, 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 blah. In the main event, we get Pete Dunne taking on Damien Priest, and Priest wins in 14 minutes and 30 seconds. But it was a pretty straightforward back and forward match. Dunn and Priest kind of tangled up in the corner, and the referee was kind of in between them, trying to separate them. And when the referee's back was turned, Damien Priest took Pete Dunne to Dick Kick City, and he hits his finisher for the win. So Damien Priest gets the win, heelishly, but he does get the win. Puts over Damien Priest. I definitely think they're going to have a rematch down the line, maybe at a TakeOver. This can be kind of the singles TakeOver match that doesn't have a title on the line. Maybe this can be another main event for an NXT show. But I thought it was a decent match. I'm not completely sold on Damien Priest just quite yet. I think his character still needs some tweaking. I really am a big fan of Pete Dunne. I'm a believer in him. I think they do have some equity from Pete Dunne, winning so often that he's able to, eat some of these losses. But I don't think you want to, have him lose many more, if any. I think Pete Dunne is definitely one of those guys who could be the top person in your company. Yes, he has a kind of different body type. He's a little shorter. He has the British accent and all this other stuff. But hopefully Triple H doesn't get caught up in those other things like Vince McMahon does. But, another thing is, why is Pete Dunne even here? He just kind of showed up out of nowhere, and he doesn't really have like a mission statement. Maybe it's like he did everything in NXT UK, and now he's going to try to come to NXT US. But but he's lost his matches thus far. He hasn't really done anything. So I would hope that the reason for Pete Dunne to come over to the States was not just to put other guys over, but for him to actually have like a solid run here. But yeah, I mean, final thoughts. I think this show was a little kind of, I mean, it was okay, but I think all the squash matches in the 2 hour format does kind of take its toll. After a certain amount of time. I mean, the Tegan Knox match, I think if you kind of threw in like a kind of level above Tarnar, I'm just kind of trying to think of like, so I mean, that's kind of like the way the women's do. That's kind of just kind of how the way NXT is just kind of built regardless. It's like you have the top, and you have the jobbers. There's kind of no like middle ground. Like, yes, you have the North American Championship level, but there's kind of like no guys, like there's not, a mid card like there is in WWE where there's like, Apollo Crews or, those guys that, can have a really good match, but they're going to lose in the end. I mean, these people, especially in the women's division, like no shot at them, but these women who are kind of the designated jobbers usually are not very good wrestlers, and that's the reason why they're jobbers. I mean, even Io Shirai when she took on Kaden Carter, I mean, she's a good wrestler, but they're still kind of green, and I kind of wish we had like a Blue Pants or some veteran wrestler in there that could really help out these women. And not saying that like Io Shirai or Tegan Knox need to be have their hand held through a match, but maybe just have some more competitive showcase matches. I mean, maybe more like the Imperium where that you can viably, talk yourself into maybe they get upset. But, I mean, that is it for NXT. Hopefully, this week they kind of go add some bigger matches. We have the North American title match. I assume Roderick Strong is going to keep the title there. Maybe, I mean, I could kind of see, like, the big guys fighting for a long time. They kind of cancel each other out, and then Roderick Strong kind of sneakily comes in to get the victory. So now let's move on to episode 3 of Total Divas. We get Natalya still kind of lamenting the, not, I guess that's probably not the right word, but still kind of grieving about her father's death. Ronda invites Natty and Tyson Kidd over to the farm to do some farming things. They go on a nice goat walk. They like walk around the farm. They go up on like a hill. They look over the city of wherever they are, Southern California. Natty tries to like herd the goat across the river, but then Natty takes a bump and gets all muddy. It was terrible. But the highlight of Total Divas was that there was just so much Liv Morgan on this show. Maybe it's a show, maybe it's a little hint that Liv Morgan is going to be on the next season of Total Divas. But the whole reason why she was with the group was because Carmella just bought a new house, and she was going to invite everybody for she told Corey Graves that it was going to be a housewarming party that everyone's going to come over, having a good time. But in reality, it actually was for them to kind of have a coming out party. It was a surprise birthday party for Corey Graves, and unfortunately, Corey could not make it. It's a shame that he couldn't, because there was some weather issues, and he was going to take an early flight instead of taking it the next day because the rain or whatever was bad. So he had to leave, and unfortunately he couldn't make the party. And then Carmella was all sad and in her feelings and stuff, and she didn't tell Corey, but then in the end she does tell Corey, and he feels bad, but he says that he very much appreciates the gesture that she was going to do and all that other good fun stuff. And then we get Liv Morgan and the girls going to some sort of like mermaid gimmick restaurant that Carmella loves to go to, and they see the mermaids kind of floating around in the area, and Liv was like, oh, that should be fun, we should do it. So then she volunteers herself and Naomi to take the class, but then Naomi doesn't want to take the class because she's kind of having some body dysmorphia issues. She doesn't feel like she's in the right shape. She doesn't want to be swimming around and everything. But then, in the end, they end up doing it, and they have a good time. They go back to the same restaurant the next day or 2 days later, whatever, and Naomi and Liv do it, and it's just a whole good, fun time. And that's pretty much it. I mean, the other thing is kind of Sonya Deville is the other main storyline. They finish up the float, they do Pride, they have a good old fun time. Sonya Deville having fun that she's able to be out and free and just be herself. And then also she has a little bit of a, not temper tantrum, but she kind of has an issue with Carmella, not forcing her, but Carmella wanted her to wear like, a 80s style dress, but then Sonya Deville doesn't feel comfortable wearing dresses. She, kind of feels as though it was kind of going back in time to where she was like a teenager, her early 20s, when she wasn't out yet, and she kind of felt like she had to be forced into this certain mold and wear dresses and be pretty and all this other stuff. And so she just kind of didn't like it, and she kind of had her, she told everybody, and it was just this nice emotional moment of Sonya talking about who she was and coming out to all her friends and everything like that. So that'll do it for the Total Divas recap. Going to the Under the Radar mailbag to see if any of you lovely people emailed and asked a question, but of course you didn't. It's okay. It's okay. I don't blame you. But if you would like to email, it is utrmailbag@gmail.com. That is UTR for Under the Radar mailbag@gmail.com. Make sure to check out the latest edition of the Bulletcast and also my other podcast that I do, Curveballs and Chair Shots. We talk about sports and wrestling. Last week was our 2-year anniversary, episode 104, and mega episode. We go over the week in the NFL. We preview the World Series. We also preview the NBA season, as well as talk about AEW, SmackDown, Raw, and everything in between. So that is Curveballs and Chair Shots. You can find us on whatever podcast app or whatever, on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, everything. So if you listen to this podcast, you probably can find Curveballs and Chair Shots. So thank you all very much. I host it, so if you liked me doing my little hosting shtick on the Bulletcast, it's just like that, but for like an hour. So thank you all very much. Speaking of the Bulletcast, we will be back on Thursday to discuss Raw, or not NXT, but we will discuss AEW and SmackDown, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Hope you all had a good time. And until next time, goodbye and good night. Bye-bye.